NAV. I think you'll see that we've simplified it a bit more and made it a little easier to use. We started introducing what we call e-services, and that pace has picked up dramatically. So think of an e-service. A lot of customers, when we talk to them about the cloud, they think, oh, I can put my servers in the cloud. I think the more important part of the cloud for small and mid-sized businesses is these e-services that have started to proliferate. And we make it very easy for you to connect your NAV to those e-services. So if you want to do electronic banking, or if you want to not key in your payables and have them automatically scanned and entered for you, there's a whole bunch of e-services that we've put in the product, and we continue to do more of those in 2017, and we'll look at some of those today. And then in 2016, we really streamlined the interface across all the client types, and we added about 60 enhancements to the web client in 2016. That continued again in 2017. We also, probably back in NAV 2013, started to look at, how can we marry our productivity tools, like Office, with our business solutions like Dynamics NAV, and make a little more seamless for our customers when they're moving around between those two systems. I think we really finished that in 2017, and that's probably the first thing I'll show you, is how closely those two applications can work and tie in together, and what the benefit is to you guys of that. And we started to introduce in 2017, probably the most important thing is we're now introducing intelligent operations into our business solutions. So Microsoft as a whole has made a big investment in machine learning, artificial intelligence through our Azure and Cortana Analytics suite, and we're now embedding those into the products. And I'll show you, there's two examples in NAV 2017 where you can leverage machine learning to help you make better decisions within your ERP system. So that's clearly, I think of the last couple of years as bringing productivity and business solutions together. I think the next couple of years the story will be making that machine learning, artificial intelligence easy for customers to consume within the context of their business solution to help them make better decisions. So we'll look at those as well. So sort of have three key focuses around that roadmap in 2017. Bringing the two worlds together, the Office experience that I'm going to show you. That includes embedding Power BI into NAV. So we could use Power BI with NAV. Now we can publish Power BI directly within the context of the NAV role pages of the different users in your organization. Enhancing the core. Huge amount of investment in making the setup, the configuration simpler, easier. If you want to integrate to Dynamics CRM, if you have it, it's now a couple of clicks, about 3 minutes. Wait. So we've refined that user experience, that setup, that configuration. We've done enhancements in finance jobs in the NAV CRM. There were some significant enhancements for those using that, and we've added some features around items. So there's a portion of our effort that went into enhancing that core, a portion that went into bringing those two worlds together, productivity and business solutions, and then new opportunities that's really related around the e-everything, the machine learning, Cortana intelligence being injected into the application, and then two new apps that are available from Microsoft that work with all of our products, as well as some other products on the market, which are Power Apps and Flow. I don't think we're going to spend a lot of time on that today, but think of that as the ability to create cross-platform workflow. So maybe a workflow that starts in Word or Excel or Outlook and moves your users in your company through a process that maybe ends in NAV, or starts in Dynamics CRM, works its way through NAV, goes back to Office. So you can create these cross-platform workflows in a tool that is really an end-user tool. No development, no need to understand software desiging questions. The same thing with Power Apps. You can quite literally build an app that you could publish on your employee's phone without any coding, that could do really interact with any of your information in NAV or so that's a bit more technical. I don't think we're going to hit on that much, but I wanted you to know the concept there. I think that's going to bring a lot of power to end users over time. So the first thing I want to look at is what's called the Outlook add-in for Dynamics NAV. So we'll take a look at that. So I have Outlook loaded here. Oh, I need to do something first. So I'm going to log into an email as a customer. It's not working?
Oh, searching for signal.
Oh, I know it's on two screens probably. Every time I go back and forth on the PowerPoint, it switches. Now it's good?
Hold on. Yes.
Okay. So really, I'm the customer right now, and I'm writing an email saying, you know, I want a quote for 10, let's say, bicycles. I'll keep it simple for now. As a user who's using NAV, I get an email from my customer. It'll take a minute to come in. So there's my email. And the first thing, we can turn on the NAV box within Outlook today. Okay. So because it recognizes that contact, it's going to present me with information directly in my mail about that particular customer. So a typical office worker loses 40% of their productivity switching between apps. So when you think of getting a question in your inbox about, hey, this invoice seems wrong, can you tell me why they're charging me $12? You would go from your Outlook, you'd go into your NAV, you'd search for AR receivables, you get the information. So right here, I can really get to all that information. All these blue things are hyperlinks, drill downs. I've got a lot of information on what's happening on my customer. You know, I can drill down, I can go directly all the way to the invoice if I need to. I can show that actual invoice. I can drill right through this, much like you're used to in NAV today. And because it's a customer, it's presenting me some options related to a customer. If it was a vendor, I'd have a different set of choices here. Create a purchase order, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and create that quote form. And it's all the header information's filled in for me, right? It's nice and easy. And I'll just type BI for bicycle. It picks that up. And he wanted 10. I'll put 10 in there. And the next thing I'm going to want to do is send him an email saying, hey, did I do a quote or an order? I can't remember. Hopefully I did a quote. Yeah, I did, because this. So I'll send that quote out, and it's going to prepare the email for me. You see this little template sitting here? Some of you on 2016 might have known that you can now create most of your forms, like quotes, order acknowledgments, directly in Word. So it used to be hard to write or modify those reports. Today we can do them in Word. So this is just a Word template that somebody's created in NAV that says use this template when I send a quote. So it puts all the nice detail there, and behind there is the report, which is also just a report that was created by a user or modified by a user in Word. So it sets all that information up for me, and I can go ahead and send that out. I'm going to head back to the customer, and maybe I should force that email to go right away. Give me a sec. So I'll send that email out. I'll head back to the customer and I'll wait for that to come back. So there's that quote that just came across. I'm going to go ahead and say, you know, great, like the price, add 2 bikes, and send me the order confirmation. So I'll send that over. I'll go back and be my NAV user again. So there's that document coming back, and you see this link here? It's recognized that this email is referring to something to do with a document in NAV, whether it's an invoice, a purchase order, a quote. So I can actually open it up right there. And what he wants me to do is add to and make an order out of it. So I can just convert that over, and maybe again I want to send it out, email him a confirmation of that, and it's going to do the same thing we saw earlier. It's going to put the template information in, the quote. So when you think of your operational roles, sales, customer service, purchasing, if you do a lot of interaction with your customers through emails, you can now do that work almost exclusively within the framework of Outlook in relationship to your ERP, your financial system. So, you know, we started several years ago bringing those two products closer and closer together. Now I think the wall is down completely between those productivity tools that you use a lot during your day and those business solutions, those ERPs. So that's the first thing I wanted to sort of walk through. We can go further. We can actually, you know, edit the customer in here, change a phone number. All of those things can happen directly in Outlook. I just gave you the tip of the iceberg in terms of the types of things you can do from there. So the next thing I wanted to take a look at is embedded Power BI. So this does require, this and edited Excel, does require that you authenticate through Azure Active Directory, which is a free part of Azure. You can't do this if you're authenticating the traditional way, because Power BI is a service that you have to authenticate with. It's a cloud service, so you have to authenticate with something. We authenticate it with Azure. So that's a fairly simple process to link your users to that Azure Active Directory. So there's a little technical step to make this work and the edit in Excel. But just to give you an idea of what we're looking at, essentially, let me log into the web client. So I'm logged in with my Office 365 user in this case. We have, for those of you who don't know, we've had single sign-on for a while. So if you're using Office 365, one username, password will log you into NAV, Dynamic CRM, Word, Excel, all those things. That's how I connect my NAV. I've got all the different applications that I use within my subscription. So I have Power BI, Word, Excel, those types of things. I'm going to take a look at Power BI. And this, what I'm about to show you, happened in NAV 2016. We essentially published what's called a content pack for Power BI. So you can simply go to services in Power BI. You can sign up for Power BI. Even the free version will allow you to do this, by the way. You can sign up for the free Power BI as an individual user. The main difference between the free and the paid Power BI is if you build reports and content, you can't share it with your colleagues in your company because you're signing up individually to just use this Power BI for free. If you want to build content that is shared across the company, then you get into the paid versions. But you'll see down here there's a little app called Microsoft Dynamics NAV. So if you have 2016, you can just go to sign up for Power BI for free, go click on this, and hit get, and then you got to put your URL, your username, and your password, and it will bring in everything you see here. It's called a content pack, and what I'm showing you on this screen is essentially the out-of-the-box content that comes with that Power BI. Okay, and once you're in Power BI, you can do things like sales by I don't know, customer and region. So you can just sort of ask it questions in natural query language, and it'll actually go out and build. Oops, I forgot. You know, you can just ask it questions in natural query language, and it's going to go ahead and create those reports based on those questions. And in this case, I've said, give me a map, sales by customer, by region, and I can drill in and out of those, and then I can pin it to the dashboard. Okay. So once you've created these reports, come with it, and you can create others by asking questions, or you can get a little more technical and design those reports. Once you've created reports, you now have the ability. Let's go back over to NAV. You now have the ability to publish those on the role pages. So if I go down this role page, I've published a Power BI report specifically to my role page. Okay, so in this case, I've got a map of some sales and things. I'm going to expand that out so we can see it a bit better. But essentially, I can design a report, I can put slicers on it, and then I can publish it out to a role page for use. This is a pretty simple one. where I've got some sales information, but I can say, I want to see it for just Amy, and we see Amy worked primarily in Europe. I want to see it just for Spencer, and there, you can easily put 5, 6 slicers that affect those graphs and those reports, and you can publish it right out to your dashboard. So if you're looking for ad hoc reporting, I got a business issue today. You can. It's a great tool. I have one customer I saw a few weeks ago. The production manager, when he starts his day, he showed me how he starts his day now. He goes, who is absent? And he gets a list of who hasn't clocked in, and then he says, show me my yield by resource. And it gives him his yield for the shift at night, and then if he's got a problem, he can ask questions and go further down the line. So it really facilitates that kind of ad hoc reporting, and traditionally today, you'd have to go out to your IT group and ask them to design you a new report and create that kind of report. You can do a lot with that ad hoc querying. And then you can publish out the reports that you think are useful on a daily basis into Dynamics NAV, right in the dashboards, and you can share those out to your colleagues. Any questions there? Okay. We also enhanced the Excel integration in this current version. So if I take a look at a set of data in a list view in Dynamics NAV, so let's say I want to add some items and I want to edit some of my items. Okay, so I can go to the item list as an example. It's much slower with the go-to menu than it was this morning. So I can look at my items across that system, and I'm just going to change it to list view, which is the view you guys are used to. There's some changes in some of the views. We can do different views now. I can hit edit in Excel and save that and open it. It's going to go ahead and open up Excel for me. I'm just going to say enable editing, and then that information is going to drop into Excel, and I can actually edit it from here and add new records and publish it back. So just one example, but the tie-in and the ability to work with that Excel has been enhanced. So let's take a quick look. This one earlier this morning, I changed the description to Athen Trevor. So I'll just edit that. And if I want to go ahead and add a new item, let's call it NAV demo. And I'll just put the unit of measure. I can go ahead and hit publish, and I just created a new item in NAV and edited another one. So, very easy if you want to clean up some of your data, move things around. Plus, you can build reports off this, and it's live information that's shared back and forth, right? You'll notice when it updated, it filled in some of those default fields in that record for me, and it fixed the pieces and made it uppercase because it's uppercase, so it validates some of that information as we go. And we might have to wait a minute or two before that shows up here. Still hasn't shown. Now it has?
Yeah.
Okay, so Athen Trevor is there. My new item's there. I don't know why Trevor didn't update, did I? It'll update in a minute. So basically it'll send that data back and forth. A lot easier to work with, keeping your data clean and stuff. The next is, this is actually a feature that was released in 2016, but it got enhanced in 2017. So I don't know if you guys know, but if you own NAV 2016 or above, you can have 75 invoices converted from PDFs and keyed in as payables a month for free as part of owning NAV. So this is along the lines of those e-services I talked about. So when I think about the power of the cloud for SMB businesses, it's not putting your servers in the cloud. It's the ability to consume these cloud-based services that are really democratizing some of these things. So, even 10 years ago, there were companies that did this. Instead of keying in their invoices, they would get scanned, converted to data, and automatically entered into their accounting system. But, even 5 years ago, you could talk to somebody like a Xerox, they'd come in, you'd spend $100,000, and you'd have a system to do that. Now with NAV, you get 75 a month for free. If you need more, you buy a package, and maybe it's another $5-10 or something. So really what this is we enable, if you guys are familiar with Lexmark, remember Lexmark printers? Anybody have any in their office today? A few still? Okay. Their biggest business today is this OCR business. They run a huge cloud-based service used by tens of thousands of customers all around the world that don't want to key in invoices. So we work with them, and we've set that up so that our customers can easily consume that service. So you'll see a bit more of this probably later. Here. Let's see. So under service connections, there's a bunch of service connections that I've enabled. This is just one example of them. So to set up the OCR service, you go to Lexmark's site, you sign up, you get a username and a password, and you walk through this little setup. You put your username, your password. That's about it. Takes about 3-4 minutes. And then let's take a look at what that looks like. So I can go to my incoming documents, and I'm going to do this in a very manual way. You get an email address where you could tell all your vendors to send their invoices. How many of you get most of your invoices by PDFs and emails today? Not very many. It's a few. Okay. So the extent to which your vendors are sending you PDF emails, most of them are probably capable of it if you ask. It goes to an email address, and all of what I'm about to show you can happen automatically in one step. But just to go through it, let's say I grab a PDF invoice. We'll take a quick look at that. So basically, you know, pretty simple invoice, line item, that kind of thing. Basically you send it out to the OCR service, and you can automate that step with the workflow in NAV. There's already a workflow template to automate those steps. And then you have to wait a few minutes, and you can go back and receive that document. So I'm going to see if it's ready. Not yet. Okay, and I put some workflow to automatically do the next step, which is create document. It automatically created the document after it came back successfully. And if I take a look, I now purchase invoice. The enhancement in 2017 was the ability to deal with line items. Okay, line items it could deal with before, but they were all entered as GL. It can actually recognize items now and create payables that involve items. So, you know, in 2016, you could use it for things like your Bell bill or your, you know, those types of expense type invoices, but not really for purchase order type transactions with item. Now it'll support both. So if you're already using it, that's the change in 2017. So you can use it a bit more broadly. And then it's also gotten smarter. So when I first did that invoice 3 times ago, because you can see I've done it 3 times, it didn't recognize the vendor. So I had to tell it who the vendor's name was, and then I clicked this button, Send OCR Feedback. And it goes back to Lexmark OCR service, and it improves. And next time I did it, it knew who the vendor was. So because it knows the data that's there, it's saying if I get this combination of data, I now know it's this vendor. And so it's very easy to set up. It's not like you spend a ton of time trying to map different invoice formats to data and things like that. It's quite smart in terms of how it works. So that's an example of that e-service integration that started in 2016 and got a little better here. The next thing I want to talk about is the intelligent operations. So we've already done quite a bit of this in our dynamic CRM system. This is the first release of NAV that includes embedded artificial intelligence, machine learning into the systems that our customers can leverage. Okay, so it's actually remarkably easy to set up. So we'll take a look at that setup first. Sorry, that's not the right role. So if I go into my business manager role where most of these assisted setups are, I can go down to, and it's actually an extension, which I know they're going to talk about a bit later in the day, an extension you as a customer can go grab, an extension from Microsoft, and it's called Sales and Inventory Forecasting Setup. So what I had to do to set this up is I had to go to the Cortana Intelligence Gallery. So Cortana Analytics Suite, which has all our machine learning products in it. I had to go out to there, and I'll walk you through this quickly. And this gives me some instructions on how to do this, but essentially I open it up and I get into Microsoft Azure Machine Learning Studio, and it opens up that package. By the way, there's a couple different forecasting products available depending on what you're looking to do. This one works out of the box with NAV. The other ones doesn't mean you can't consume them. So I go South Central US. That's just the region that I want to dump this thing in. And then it prepares that package. Now, all I need to do is run it, which will take about 5 minutes, and then deploy web service. This is a bit technical, but that the URL and the username and password that I then go back into NAV and enter here and here. And then I just decide in NAV how often I want to run it. Do I want to run it every day, once a week? And what that's actually doing is taking a look at your sales history, your transactions, and trying to predict for you what you need in terms of inventory coverage for your different items. Now, I recognize not all businesses can forecast based on sales history, but I think the importance here is these types of features you're going to see embedded more and more into our business solutions. They're coming. They're becoming practical. They're becoming democratized so that any business can really consume that type of service. And then if we take a look at the results, I don't have enough sales history in my NAV, so I'm going to head over here. But if we take a look at the results, if I look at one of my items, once you've turned that feature on, inside the fact box, when you look at that item, you'll see if the forecast identified that you need some stuff, you'll see it over here. So essentially I can look at the inventory forecast or the sales forecast. Essentially it's recommending at these periods that I need to start biting this item. So I can simply say create purchase order, and it's going to go ahead and create that purchase order for me. And notifications, which is another new feature in NAV. We used to receive notifications differently. They've added more notifications. There used to be those pop-ups. You know, you enter an order and there's a credit problem and the box pops up. They've changed the logic around how we deliver that, and we've made it easier to create your own notifications relevant to your business process. But I got here saying I've run out of stock on some other items this vendor supplies me. Do you want to add them too, since you're placing an order? So it's a little smarter than that. It knows that there's some other items out there that maybe you need to buy because of the analysis did. I don't feel like keying them in, so I'll say yes, please, and it goes ahead and it adds those to those purchase orders. There's another example embedded in NAV 2017 around the cash flow forecasting. So we've had cash flow forecasting that looks at, you got a customer order that's shipping in 10 days and their payment terms are 30 days, so I think I'll get the money here, and it does the same thing with the payables and different things, and it calculates your cash flow forecasting. You can turn machine learning on now on top of that to have the machine learning try and refine that cash flow forecast based on those features. I think of the last couple of years being tying all those productivity tools together, and I think we really finished that in 2017 with what I showed you in the Outlook integration. And I think you're going to see this ability to consume machine learning in a meaningful way to help people make better decisions and be able to predict where their business is going better, becoming more and more embedded into the product over the next couple of versions. I think that's actually going to happen quite quickly. How am I doing in time? Yep. Okay. So I have two more things I want to show, and I'll show those quickly. For any of you using Dynamics CRM, we completely rewrote the integration in 2016. I've been, for the most part in my career, when I implemented or sold NAV, I did it with Dynamics CRM, so I've been using both for a long time. What is going on with the screen? Every time I close the screen. Is it good? Why does it keep? I'm not, is it flashing up there too? Strange. Okay. So today, in 2016, we rewrote the integration. We enhanced it a little bit more in the current version. But if you have Dynamics CRM and you want to integrate your NAV to Dynamics CRM, my nephew can do it. It takes about 2 minutes. So I wrote up a procedure for him, had him test it. It's really easy now. So that in this assisted setup, you've got Set Up Dynamics CRM Connection. You click on it, You say yes. You put your URL for your CRM. You put your username and password. You hit finish. Takes about 5 minutes to publish on the CRM side. And that out-of-the-box integration is point-to-point. So the old way we used to do this is we used vendors, ISV solutions like Scribe, or we had a little connector. That meant there was a database and a program in between NAV and CRM. Now it's point-to-point integration, so there's no longer anything in between. The out-of-the-box integration, which partners can modify for you, and that's now done inside NAV and the NAV code if you want to modify it, supports a quote-to-cash type process. So customers synced, customers' items, currencies, an order can go from CRM over to NAV, the invoice can go from NAV back to CRM. All of that is supported in the out-of-the-box integration. So just quickly to take a look at what that looks like. So let's say I look at one of my customers, my customer 10,000. I can see here that he has 6 opportunities. We have 6 opportunities we're working on with him, and he's got some cases. He's called with a question, or he had a complaint or a problem or an issue. So I can drill down to those directly in NAV and see some information on them directly in the NAV. So this is like a list view you're used to in NAV. You set the columns the way you want, the information you want. So I got some basic information there. But maybe I want to actually see more detail. So I can click on the opportunity, and that's going to take me right over to Dynamics CRM, where I can take a look at where that opportunity is, what phone calls there were, what emails there were, get a little more information on that particular opportunity. Again, because I have that single sign-on, I log into NAV with my O365 user email address and password. I do for CRM and everything else. So I don't have to re-authenticate, re-log in as I move between these systems. So there's my opportunity. I'm just going to drop back to the account. And if I'm a salesperson in CRM, I might understand. So as a customer service person in NAV, I might want to see if there's any deals coming or if there's any complaints or cases. As a salesperson in CRM, I might want to understand where the customer stands financially. So it publishes on the customer record information about, what's their outstanding balance, what do they owe us, what's shipped but not invoiced, that type of information. The salesperson can get visibility on the other side, and of course I can drill right back to that application, back to NAV if I want from the CRM, and see a bit more information. So the last thing I'm going to show, this came out in 2016. We did a lot of work on mobility in 2016. So I don't know if all of you have seen this. I think I'm going to take 2 seconds to show it. But today, you can go to the Google Play Store. You can go to, what's the iStore or Apple Store? I don't know what it's called. And you can search for Dynamics NAV, and you can find an app that you can download there. And all you need to do is put your URL, your username, and your password, and you can connect to your NAV. So interesting enough, I don't know, it must have been at least a month ago, I was walking around a plant customer I know, and they're quality people. Used to walk around with pieces of paper to do their in-process inspection. And I guess one day one guy found this, downloaded it, and started walking around with his own iPhone in the plant, and instead of writing it on a piece of paper, he's just keying it in there. So we didn't design a mobile app for just salespeople. Every single function you can do in NAV, you can do on the app. Everything. There's nothing that you can do in NAV that you can't do on this mobile app. You're presented with the information based on your role. So this is my role page, like we saw earlier. If I flip over, I see the same reports. I've got some favorite stuff. I've got a sample trial balance, and it's very usable. Let's say I'm out at a customer dropping something off, and I want to do a sales invoice. So I can just type in the name of my customer. It's going to pull up all that contact information. I'll go add a line item. But the only thing I have in my demo database is bicycles, so I sell lots of bicycles, guys. So I'll just try and find my bicycle, put my quantity in, and I'll just back out of my lines. I've got my total, all my information, and you want a copy of that invoice? You bet. I post and send. I forgot. I had an approval workflow on that, so I'm going to have to do that again. I approve my own invoices because I don't like to log out and log back in as another user in a demo. But oh no, I think I have to. There it is. I'll approve it. Okay. And then post and send. Yeah, anyway, you can post and email it right out from there, and you get that nice email that I showed you earlier. Maybe somebody else's, my approver. So, just keep in mind whether you have an iPad, an iPhone, a Google Play pad, you've got a Google phone, a Windows phone, you can go to the store, download that app, and interact with your NAV system from anywhere today. I think that's it.
Cool.
Thank you, guys.
And if there's anyone online that has is that better? Perfect. Yeah. If anyone online has any questions, Trevor Molag is kind of monitoring the chat, so he'll kind of notify us. So Trevor touched a little bit on a new feature in NAV 2017 called assisted setup. Can you hear me? Okay. I'll try my best. Pretty far down there. So assisted setup is a new feature that Microsoft has added to NAV 2017. The idea behind that is time to value. So steps that maybe you don't want to have to go and do a bit of research, a bit of Googling, maybe go to customer source, get some training material. So common activities that you're going to be running. It's going to kind of guide you through that process. A really good example of that would be kind of company setup. When you set up a brand new company, there's a lot of standard steps that you would do. You want to fill in the company address, you want to pull the logo in, you want to set the bank details up. So the assisted setup is going to help you with that when you start a brand new company. Maybe you want to pull the tax setups in, you're in BC, you want to pull the BC tax setup in, or you're doing a US company, you want to bring the US tax in. So the assisted setup is going to help you with that. It also allows you to monitor your progress. So there are a number of different assisted setups. So for example, Trevor was talking about using the Azure domain authentication. So assisted setup will help you do that, and it's also going to identify to you that you have completed that step. So if you're not sure, you can go back and look at assisted setup, see the ones that you have completed and ones that you haven't. Here's some of the default setup data that you can get through assisted setup. So you can get a chart of accounts, like I said, some taxes, dimensions. You can set up templates for your customers and your vendors and your items. Those are the ones where you can set up multiple different different customer templates. So this is one of my US-based customers. I want these to be the default. This is my Canadian-based. I want that to be the default. And also data exchange definitions. I'm going to run in and do a bit of a demo here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to search for assisted setup, if I can spell it right. So I'm going to go to assisted setup, and I can see that I've only completed 2 of these. I've set up my Azure Active Directory, and I have set up my approval workflows, which we'll come back to a little bit later. But one that I'm interested in is I want to set up reporting. So by setting up reporting, this is going to create a data set that I can expose into Excel, or maybe I can put it into Power BI, or I can create an OData stream for any other application. And so rather than going in and having development skills to be able to do that, I can use this assisted setup to help me with that. So I click on it, and it kind of welcomes me, explains a little bit about what this assisted setup is. I'm going to go next. I got a couple of different options here. We're going to come back to it, but the first one that I want to do is I want to create a new data set. It's going to give me the options to kind of name it something, so I'm going to call it my customers. It does give you the option to select pages or queries, so any page that you have in the system, you can kind of set that up. For this demo, I'm using a query because I've got a reduced a customer set, so I'm going to type query in here. Type in my query ID that I've set up, which is the customer list, and click Next. And this will show me all of the fields that I have available based on the object type that I've selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select number, name, address, city, and contact. If I wanted to, I can go ahead and add filters. And these filters are not just for the fields that I have. They're on the record sets that are available to me. So I can say Add Filter. I can click on this, and I can go and choose any of the fields on the customer record. But I'm going to leave this blank for the time being. So I'm happy with what I've got. So I got my number, my name, my address, city, and contact. I'm going to go ahead and say Publish. And what this has done for me is it's actually created a web service. I can open it directly from here. Because I'm using OData, it's JSON, so it's going to try and open Visual Studio, and I get pretty boring. So what I'm actually going to do is go over here to Web Services, and we'll see the web service that it's created. Here's my customer list. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this link here. I'm going to go to Excel on my local drive, and I am going to get my data from an external source. I'm going to choose my OData feed. I'm going to put that OData link in. Get my customers. Next. Finish. Where do I want to put it? And voila, it's going to pull me the data down. Now the thing with this OData connection is it does read from the database. So if you wanted to save this and send it to someone like your salespeople, you can do, and they can kind of refresh as the data gets updated. You can save credentials in there if you had a specific integration account you wanted to use, or you can force the users to use their own authentication to the database too, but it is the NAV security that it is looking at. So it's not going to the SQL level, it is NAV that it's authenticating against to make sure that I have the correct permissions. So although I have that customer list, I noticed that I want to send this to the salespeople, and I don't actually have an email and a phone number, so I want to go and modify that. I'm going to go back into NAV again. Go into my assisted setup. Go back to my reporting. It says I've completed it. Do I want to do it again? Yes, I do. I'm going to click Next. This time I want to edit an existing data set. go next again. It's going to ask me which one. Well, I've only created one so far. It was this query my customers. So I'm going to go ahead and say, OK. It's going to fill in those details so I can validate that I am modifying what I am expecting. I'm going to click next again. So I'm going to add my phone and my email in. And I'm going to go ahead and publish this. If we go back to my web services again, we can see it's actually as part of this cell here. It's part of the string it's created for OData. It does include the field names. So now my screen resolution is all messed up. We can see it's added contact and phone number there at the end. So again, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to do new sheet. Back to my data again. Get external data from other sources. OData. Do have these new fields at the end, so I do have to plump this back in again. Now we can see it's added contact and phone number. The demo data doesn't have a lot of phone numbers in it. Okay. Last thing I want to do is, this is great, but I've got a few people that actually I want to send this to, and now I want to include things like sales statistics, so how much sales for this particular customer. I don't want to send that to everybody, but this is a really good start for what I want. So what I want to do is copy this and then add to it. So again, I'm going to kind of go back into my, my assisted setup. Back into my reporting again, yes. So now what I'm going to say is, hey, I want to create a copy of an existing data set. I'm going to say next. Choose my existing data set. Again, we've only got one, which we just modified. Now I'm going to say my customer, and then just put sales at the end, so it needs to be a new name. I'm going to click next. I've got sales LCY here. Publish it and finish. And now if I go back to my web services again, I got my customer sales. Can copy the cell back into Excel. New. Back to my data. And I put it over here because that's where my mouse cursor was. But we can see at the back there now we've got sales LCY, which for all of you people who have been using NAV for a while, you know as a flow field. So it's calculated that value for me and exposed it in that OData. So as sales go through, that number is going to change as I refresh the data. So that's a bit of a little demo on assisted setup. Any questions on that? Nope. Okay. The next feature I'm going to show is smart notifications, and I think Trevor touched on that a little bit earlier on. Let's go back to home. So I'm sure all of you that use NAV already know when those error messages come up or those credit memo boxes come up, they can be a bit of a nuisance. You get a yes, no, you have to reply to it. It kind of gets in the way. You hit escape and refresh, etc. And it kind of can get in the way of what you're doing. You might know that a customer, for example, has exceeded their credit limit, but you want to continue anyway. So these new smart notifications that Microsoft have are a little bit more less intrusive. They have a little bit more complexity to them, so I can action notifications that come up instead of just getting, you know, hey, error, you can't do this, you're over the credit limit. It actually lets me action, drill into the data, and so they've become a little bit more useful, a little bit more utilitarian. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and create a sales invoice, and everyone will be shocked to know that I know this one's over its credit limit. So I enter in a customer number, and immediately I get the customer has an overdue balance. So instead of having that pop-up box that we all know about the credit limit being overdue, it's now showing me up in the bar at the top, a little bit less intrusive. I can continue and then come back and recognize that later. What I want to do here, though, is I'm going to go into details. It's going to show me some details for this particular customer and why they're over their limit. And I can see here that they have overdue amounts as of my demo date, it's 27th of January 2018. I can drill in here and have a little bit more of a look as to what's going on. Since I'm on the phone with this customer because I'm placing a new order, I can say, hey, this invoice is a little bit overdue. They can tell me the check's in the mail. Whether that's true or not, you never know, but I'm going to believe that it is. So I'm going to continue anyway and disregard that credit note or credit limit notification. So the customer wants to order some Tokyo guest chairs. I'm going to go ahead and put a quantity in there. And now I've managed to get myself another notification. So this time it's telling me that the available inventory for this particular item, I don't have enough to fulfill this particular order. So again, I can go in and click on the details. And I can see what's going on. And I can see that I've got an inventory shortage here of about 82. Because I kind of have the power, I can create purchase orders. What I can do from here is go ahead and create a purchase invoice directly. The system knows which vendor we usually buy this item from, so it's gone ahead and filled in those details for me. It's filled in a line with the item, and I know from the last screen that I need 82, but maybe I want to go ahead and order 90 of those. I can say OK. It's telling me that I haven't posted this document. I'm sure I want to exit. I do. And now my notification is gone, so I know I'm good to go. So I'm going to close this down. I keep getting this box. I think we had it on the purchase invoice, and now I've got it here on this particular sales invoice. This is a new one for us. This is telling me that I haven't posted this document. I mean, I've been using NAV for quite a while, and so I know when I close the document down, I haven't actually posted it. I do need to go ahead and actually post it. So if I go and look in my notifications, I can see all the ones that I have enabled. And I can see that I have this one here called Warn About Unposted Documents. So for me specifically, with regards to the new notifications, the smart notifications, I can turn that off. I can open that invoice again. And when I close it, I no longer have that notification. So I can also have a bit of control over what notifications I do and do not get. And again, if I go into my notifications, I can actually go and start defining some filters as well. So for example, here on the credit limit, I'm only having it where the credit limit is over 10,000 and the payment method for the document that I'm doing is cash. If it doesn't fall within those filters, I'm also not getting that smart notification. So I do have some control over what does show up to me and kind of what I engage with. So that was a little bit about smart notifications. Any kind of questions on that? Nope. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is go a little retro, go back to NAV 2016. I think we have a few customers here that are using NAV 2016. So there's a couple of features in there that I really, really liked, but I don't think or have seen being utilized that much. One of them is kind of quite front end, which is workflows. The second is a little bit more back end and really goes into this new concept of extensions and in particular apps. And the direction that Microsoft is heading with regards to customizing the NAV application. But I'm going to start with workflows. So I have a new, whole new menu around workflows. It is pretty generic. I can use the assisted setup that I showed earlier to kind of help me set up some workflows. But this one here, I'm going to kind of set up specifically for the demo that I want to show. If I do go into the workflows, I can see that I have two set up already. I've got a vendor approval workflow, and I also have a general journal batch approval workflow. If I wanted to create a new one, I can either create it from scratch and fill in all of the steps that I want, or the product actually comes with a number of them predefined, and then I just need to put in the additional little changes that I want and how I want it to kind of flow through the system. So for this demo, what I'm going to do is one that I know that gets asked for quite a lot, is having a batch approval. So someone fills in a batch and then they want to send it to somebody to be approved. So I'm going to choose that one here. I'm going to say OK. It's going to create a new journal batch approval workflow for me. So we can see here it has the conditions on the left, what happens, and then on the right, what is the response to that particular action. So here I've got a approval of a general journal batch is requested. Then we have the general journal batch is balanced. So we only really want the approval to come across if the batch is balanced. If it's not, then we really want to return to the user that the batch is not balanced. And so at this point, it's not really a candidate to be sent over for approvals. If it is balanced, then we can send it to an approval chain. So that can be either a direct person, or I can set up a whole workflow group, and I can set up hierarchies. I can set it up so that I can delegate it to other people. If I'm on vacation, I can set up a delegation to somebody else. If the journal is cancelled or it is rejected, then I can send a notification back to the user that that has happened to. So here what I want to do is I want to set up who receives that particular approval flow. So when I go into the response for a general journal is balanced, and I open it up with the Assist Edit button here, I get a couple of different steps that happen next. The first is it adds a record restriction. What that means is you can't post it until it's been approved or the approval has been cancelled. And then it tells me that I want to send a response to someone. So I want my approver to get a notification to say, hey, can you approve this particular batch? And I have a number of different options. I can tell it to delegate after a certain amount of time. That's if someone's too busy to get to it, then I can create a delegation chain that says if I haven't heard back within a day, then it goes somewhere else, or 2 days, or 3 days. I get the approver type, so I can use salesperson purchaser, I can use approver, I can use the workflow user group. In this case, I've gone for the direct approver versus an approval chain, or the first qualified approver, or specifying a specific approver, which is what I could do here. So there's lots of different options about how you can set up who receives the notification to approve these things. Speaking of the notifications for the approvals, there's a couple of different ways that they can get delivered. So I have to go and set up the approval user setup. So here I've set up a number of different Encore accounts, and also Spencer Lowe, an account we keep using for demos here. And we can see that Spencer's direct approver is Encore 2. That's who I'm logged in as. And if I go to Encore 2, I can go to notification setup. And what this is doing is this is telling me how I'm going to receive my notifications. What's my preference? Do I want to receive them in an email, or do I want to receive them using the internal notifications, so note or email? When do I want to receive it? Instantly? Or do I want to schedule it so that it comes at a particular time? Hey, in the morning at 8:30, I know I'm going to be in the office at 8:30. Can you send me all my notifications at once? And then also we have to define what the display target is going to be. So is it going to be the Windows client or is it going to be the web client? So for this particular demo, I've made it instant and I've made it a notification within NAV. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pretend to be Spencer, and we're going to create a journal, and I'm going to approve it. So if I go back into this session of NAV, I've logged in at the bottom here. You can see I'm logged in as Spencer. I'm going to go ahead and select General Journal. I'm going to do a cache to a cache. Not this is something you would ever do, but it's good for demo purposes. Then what I can do is I can go ahead and say post. So do I want to post the journal line? And it's going to say, I can't do this because I have an approval workflow in place now. So I can't bypass that. I actually have to follow what has been set up in the system. So if I go to my actions, I can see I now have this option called send approval request. So I can say, I want to send this to the approver. We know through my workflow setup that it's going to come to my Encore 2 account directly. So if I go back into NAV as Encore 2, back to my home, like I said, rather than set up email, I set it up using the notification setup. So I scroll down to my notifications. I can see that I now have a note that says General Journal Batch Cache requires your approval. So I double click that, it takes me directly to the journal. I can review it, make sure all the information's there, make sure the description's correct, maybe the document number's right, and then I can go ahead and approve that. Then if I go back to Spencer, back to Spencer's Role Center and down to his notifications, I can see the approval entry has been created, so now I'm good to go ahead and post that. So I'm going to go back into my general journals again, find this guy, and I should be able to post this. There you go. So that's a quick run through of the approvals workflow and workflow in general. It is kind of quite dexterous. I can set it up in lots of different ways. This is a common one that I've had requests for, so I thought it'd be pretty kind of useful to show that one. Any questions on workflow? Okay. The last piece I'm going to get to is to talk about extensions. It is a little bit more of a technical subject, but I think kind of quite paramount to NAV as a product moving forward. One of the things that has happened with NAV over the years is when we develop and we modify the application, we actually develop directly into the source code that Microsoft provides. And so when there's updates from Microsoft, or there might be add-on products that you want to add in, there's this concept of merging all of those objects. I'm sure everyone's kind of heard that concept, us talking about merging objects. So Microsoft has wanted to move away from that and wanted to kind of segregate us from modifying source code. And so they've done that via this concept of what they call extensions. And what they do is we still develop in what looks like the core code to NAV, but it identifies any of the changes that we make as an extension to the existing NAV software. What we can then do with that is use a PowerShell script that will turn it into this new file called a NAVX file, which we publish and install into a NAV application. When we do that, if you actually go and look in the back end of the database, you don't see any of those modifications. And what that gives us is the ability that if we wanted to apply, say, a cumulative update, or we wanted to do a full upgrade, then the isolation is there to be able to do that directly to the Microsoft source code by uninstalling our app, updating it, and then reinstalling our app again. You can
bring the data back.
Correct. So if you uninstall an app and your app has new fields with data on it, for example, it will store that data elsewhere in the database so that when you update your source code, your source Microsoft code, and reapply that app, those fields will still contain that information, so you won't lose any of that information.
So essentially it means that the upgrades are much more seamless. Upgrading your app, upgrading your app, then upgrading your customer data. It's not the case that either of them change, somebody has to merge the app.
So now 2017, you have this new function called extension management. So this will show you all extensions that have been published into the database. Just because you publish it in doesn't mean that you actually have yet installed it. Installing it and actually using it in the product are somewhat two separate things. There are a number of extensions, apps that Microsoft provide out of the box. So we can see that there's the Yodel bank feed, PayPal payment support, the QuickBooks data migration if you wanted to be migrating from QuickBooks, and the sales and inventory forecast. What I've done is I've actually created a very quick modification in the system. It's called My Favorite Customer, just to show for the techies in the room a little bit what that would look like. If I go back to my folder structure here, what I've done is created my base objects. So these are the core NAV objects that haven't been modified. I've also exported out the ones that I have modified, so I've added a new field in there. There's a Boolean called My Favorite Customer. I've added that field to the page, and I've extracted those objects as text files here. There's a PowerShell commandlet that we can run, and what it basically does is it compares those together and creates what's called a delta file. So I'm going to open that up in Notepad. And if you notice here, if you've ever played with the text files in NAV, I don't actually have the whole of the object here with the changes in it. All I have is the fact that there's now been an insertion into this particular object. I can package that up in combination with a manifest file. So manifest file will help me identify that I have some dependencies. So for example, if I build an add-on on top of another add-on, say for example, Serenic Payroll or Cost Controls Job Manager, I can say in my manifest there's a dependency there so we don't run into problems with that. I can include permission sets, so if my new app has a specific permission set, I can include that in so it appears in the database. And I also have version control in there so we can make sure that we're installing the latest version. And that basically gets converted into this NAVX file, which is a bit of a FOB file with additional pieces to it. That's what I publish into the NAV database. So over here is the same database that we're looking at. And if I look at the customer table, I can see that there's no modifications to it at all. Go back to my Encore demo here. Let me extend this guy out. I can go ahead and install my favorite customer. I can see that it was published by Encore. It's version 1.0.0.0. I'm going to say next and install. Tells me that it's been successfully installed. I'm going to go back to my customers. Open it up. You can see I've got my favorite customer there. I go back into this database here. We can see that there's no field for that. I'm going to go back to this guy again. To remember the field was there, I'm going to go back to extension management. Going to uninstall. Go back to customers again. I need to log back in again. Make sure I'm in the right database. Go to customers. Open it back up. And it's gone. So that's how easy it is to move modifications now. And with this approach, Microsoft is also looking for the ISV channel. So if any of you have add-on products, Serenic Navigator, Serenic Payroll, Cost Control, any of those add-ons that we get from the ISV marketplace, we're pushing them to also use extensions, so it's that easy to get apps in and out of your environment without having to do merges, without having to do FOB imports, somewhat put it into your guys' control. Dynamics 365, which is really an uneditable and very, very, very light version of NAV, which is online, also uses this concept of apps. And there's an app store, a bit like you would have for your Apple Store for your phone or your Google Store, where you can go and pick and choose the apps that you want. And install them into your database, and you're kind of good to go. So we really feel like this is a bit of a game changer when it comes to being able to upgrade and maintain your existing NAV database, as well as even pick and maybe try you know, some of the ISVs that are out there. Hey, I think this might work for me, but you don't want to go through the rigmarole of kind of merging all those objects in. You can spin up a test database, install that app, and give it a go fairly easy. So yeah, that was the 4 things I wanted to demo. Any questions on any of that before I switch to Cindy?
So now partners will no longer be able to see the fields of each other. I will not be able to see that anymore.
You can. There are ways that you can do it. So the best way to do it, believe it or not, is actually just to turn the debugger on because the code's still there, so you can track it through the debugger. There are some other kind of tips and tricks on how to get access to it, but it also kind of obscures a little bit the source code on purpose, so that you can't go and take apps are going to be monetized, particularly on D365, Dynamics 365. So they're kind of stuck on that balance of what do they show you and what do they not show you, because we could just go and take somebody else's source code and try and monetize it for ourselves. So there's a bit of a weighing balance there. NAVX file, for example, is it is encoded. If I open it up, I don't see those text files. So the way that you would be able to see that is you would usually turn the debugger on at an entry point and just flick straight into the debugger and run through. And then you can see the code and open the variables and see what fields are there.
What about the field itself? You don't see it in the development?
Correct.
What the SQL is it?
I haven't looked in the SQL. I can take a look and let you know.
I mean, now you can open the and it's probably in the template if you export template to Excel.
I believe it still comes out into Excel. Yeah. 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 Because we're looking at the table level there, whereas when I'm looking at the NAV client, I'm looking at the page, and the OData connections that would be pulled to Excel use those pages as a definition, right? So they would still be there. Any other questions? Okay, cool. Cindy, you ready? Okay.
Do you have the web client?
Close that guy. Up there. Close it. Yep. Come down to in the Explorer. And logged in as, say, resume. You might want to log in as on-call 4.
Where's the PowerPoint slide?
Does everyone want to take a break for a couple of minutes? Yeah? Why don't we have a quick 5-minute bio break and then we'll get back at it again.
Sorry, it's slightly in a different order than mine.
Yeah, we shifted it around a little bit. It should say Cindy there, though.
Yeah.
It's different to what you have.
No, it's the same. Well, it's just that I thought mine is 24.
Yeah, no, sorry. We added some in and took some out. Can we just mute? 1 second. I'll mute here. Trevor did it then. So we're just about to get started. Just a couple of minutes more. I think we're missing a few people for sure. Is there anybody have any questions yet on everything they've seen? Any extra info? Yes, Tasha.
Thank you, John. My question is, we talked about Microsoft Flow and how that connected to Excel when you were looking at a list or a table.
Okay.
I'm wondering how that works with, say, a report, for example, the detailed trial summary.
Okay, good question. I haven't done much work with Flow yet, so I can't really comment on that, but I will say that Donnie, who you know, is going to be going down to Microsoft, I think next week, is it? Yeah, next week, and he will be doing a dedicated course on Flow and Power Apps and how they're going to work with NAV. So we'll get him to answer that question when he comes back. Any other questions? No? Are we good to get going? Okay, I'm going to leave you guys with Cindy next.
Great. So I'm going to show you 3 new features added on the finance section there. The first one here is the account category. In NAV 2017, Microsoft has introduced this new set of fields on the chart of accounts where you can define whether a GL account is an asset, a liability, an equity, income, or COG or expense accounts there. And further to that, you can also define the subcategory within it, whether it's a receivable account or it's a prepaid expense account or it's a cash account. You get to define, so the account categories are pretty predetermined. You have 6 different categories to choose from, but you have the options of setting up your own subcategories. So you get to define on high level what your chart of accounts look like and how the accounts should be grouped into the different categories there. Moreover, you get to define how each account relates to your cash flow statement, whether it's a cash account, an operating activity, an investment activity, or it's a financing activities there. So it makes your chart of account a lot easier to read, more user-friendly, and it can be it's personalizable to each one of the companies there, as well as it sets your chart of account up for the next new feature, which is the automatic financial statements. So in a new implementation, we often get asked, the second question we get asked after the after the chart of account session is, where do I find your financial statements? And the answer is, well, you kind of have to set it up yourself. So with the new NAV 2017, because you have your account categories and you have your account subcategories, your financial statement is just one button click away. So you get your chart, you get your account category up. You with a button click, generate account schedule. You have your balance sheet ready. You have your income statements ready, and you have your cash flow statements ready. And the best thing is that they're not called account schedule on your ribbon, they're called financial statements. So if you click into financial statements there, you will see an item called balance sheet, and if you click on that, it shows it brings up your balance sheet. And if you click on the income statement, it also brings up your income statement based on your account category as well as your account subcategories. For existing customer, you might ask, how does it benefit me? Or I already have account schedule and they're kind of easy enough to use. The benefit you get here is that whenever you set up a new GL account, you no longer need to remember to go update your account schedule because it's already there. Based on the account category, the system will link it up automatically. So you won't have a balance sheet that's not quite balanced because of the new account you added this year. And as well, if you change on the chart of account, if you change the category of each section here, if you change the category of the section here, the entire group get updated at the same time. So it's super easy to use, and it's very fast to set it up. Any questions so far?
There's a field for adding budgets. Can you also add comparative periods
Onto the account schedule?
to the financial statement?
I believe so. You just need to set up your column layout.
You would define that.
Any other questions? So the next new feature, so that's 2 new features there. The next new feature I'm going to show is the payment reconciliation. So how does your payment reconciliation differ from your bank reconciliation? I'm going to start with a demo on how the auto bank reconciliation works in NAV 2015, and then I'll lead to how the new payment reconciliation function works in NAV 2017. So in NAV 2015, Microsoft has introduced this new bank reconciliation function called auto bank reconciliation. Function is very easy to use. Basically, we start with a bank reconciliation screen. Click on New to create a new bank rec, and then you have to select which bank account you want to use there. And then you'll go online to download your bank statement from your bank. Your bank statement can be either in the SEPA format, the single euro payment area format, or it can be in any type of formats. So in this particular case, I have a text file for my bank statements that is in a comma delimited text file. You get to set up the mapping in the data exchange definition table. So based on those 2 files, I will do a import function. So I'll import the bank statements. Click to choose the file. And once the system read it through, it will populate the bank statements line. And then from there on, I have a couple options there. I can click on Match Automatically, where the system will pop up a prompt screen asking me what kind of tolerance date are you looking at? Do you want to make sure the transaction match if it's within a 3-day time difference or 5-day time period? I put 5 there. It'll tell me that of the 246 lines that you have imported, 5 of them are as a match. Well, it's based on, so the way it's matching is based on amount. So I'll work through the rest of the line here to match up to my bank ledger entry. For those ones, as let's say a miscellaneous charge, bank charges, I can click on the line and send it to my general journal, transfer to general journal for me to record the miscellaneous charges that does not get posted to my account until I actually see the bank statements there. So that's how the bank reconciliation works. Now, in this particular case, I have a long statement and only 5 line matches to my account. And the main reason could be that my customer simply deposit dollar amount into my bank without telling me too much detail about sending me a paper copy of what are the invoices that they apply to, or my vendor simply draws the amount because we have a auto payment agreement with them that I don't normally record in my system until I see the transaction. So that's when the payment reconciliation function comes in handy. So I see this being particularly useful in terms of a Visa card, a purchase card kind of reconciliation that you do on a periodic basis there. So I'll click on New to create a new payment journal. I'm going to select a different account just because this one there has a little bit less entry for me to reconcile than the other one. I'll click on the import bank transaction. So it's the same file that I used to upload to my bank statement. I can do that over here on my payment reconciliation screen. Click on choose to pick my file. And click OK to import. So over here, I have a bunch of lines imported into the system there. And I can see that the bank actually given me some detail based on the transaction. So a customer has sent me a transaction for $4,000 and it was applied to invoice this, and that. So I click on the apply automatically function. It gives me a pop-up message saying that 6 payments line out of the 9 lines that you imported has been applied. So the system is doing a couple of things here. So for the entry that has the descriptions and various invoice here, it's trying to match the descriptions up and match the invoice number up here. So over here, this $4,000 actually applies to 3 different invoices within the system from the same customer. So upon posting this payment reconciliation, the system is doing 3 things. Well, first, reconcile the transaction. Second, it creates the payment entries to the customer. So it creates the entry on the customer side. It applies the entries against the invoice. And it does the bank reconciliation for you because the transaction is imported from bank. So as soon as I match it up, it's doing the bank reconciliation for me. Another different type of transaction here is that I actually did a deposit to my bank a couple days ago, and it was from 3 different entries here. So 2 checks and then a petty cash deposit. The system also tried to match it up because it's the same amount for $3,500 here. It's trying to match it up and doing the reconciliation there. In this particular case, it's not creating additional entry, but just to reconcile the bank entries there. I can also do some mapping here to tell the system that consistently the service fee for coffee machine always shows up on my bank statement and actually want it to go to a specific GL account. So when I receive the payment, all I need to do is tell the system that, hey, this particular $50 transaction should be posting to an expense account I have there because it's recurring or it shows up all the time. So things like Starbucks transactions on the Visa card or the fuel, Petro-Canada or Chevron transactions on the Visa card. These are all easy to recognize text that you can map to specific GL accounts. So over here for this particular transaction, the system is automatically matching it up to my office supply because it's kind of it's copy machine fee there. For those one that is not matched, I can click on show non-applied lines there. So there's 3 lines that's not matched. Over here, I get to decide what I want to do with it. So if I know that this is actually a invoice, a payment from a customer that I haven't created the invoice for, I can actually click on transfer difference to account. So I can say transfer this particular amount to one of my customers there because I know the customer made the payments there. And I can do the same here. I can transfer this to a vendor or GL account or to a bank account here. Okay. So now all my lines has been matched up. I can click on the test report. You see, kind of like your bank reconciliation report, it shows you the lines that has been matched and the lines that's not matched. Once I'm happy with it, I can go post. So post the payments to the account and post the reconciliations to the bank there. So the benefit we get there is very efficient payment reconciliations. There's no double work. We don't need to post the transaction once and then go into the bank, do the bank reconciliations again, kind of avoid error from happening there. If you have Yodel set up, you can actually just download the statement from there and create your bank payment reconciliation there without having to import the statements here. Any questions? Okay. I'm going to pass it to Erin to show some of the new feature on the job site.
Thanks, Cindy. Let's get logged in. Messed it up. All right, let's see if that works. So as many of you probably know, Jobs is one of my favorite modules within the NAV list of modules and functionality. And I'm happy to say, and you'll be happy to hear, at least our job-based clients, that it got a nice little facelift for the 2017 version. So what I want to do is kind of walk you through some of those changes to the job module, and show off a little bit of what's now available. So specifically, we've got a few things. We've got a newly redesigned role center. So now you can subscribe to the project manager role. It's going to show you all the cool things that you see up here, and we'll step through those things one by one. We also have a newly redesigned job card, so presenting a whole lot of the information about the job a little bit better. Right on that job card is also pretty cool new stuff. You'll also see we've got a couple buttons on that home page that indicate new processes are available as well. So there's a new job setup wizard, as well as a job closing process that better ties and integrates into WIP, and also quick access to things like running processes like creating invoices out of the job module as well. So I'm going to walk through all of those. I'm not going to go through a detailed discussion of WIP. That's just too much detail, so I'll keep it a little bit high level. So a couple of quick things to note on the role center for the project manager. One, I've got all of the relevant links that a project manager or anyone running a job needs to know about. So as you can see, lists of jobs, the various tasks, access to sales invoices, purchase orders, and whatnot, as well as resources and items. Timesheets on there too, so we don't have to navigate around looking for those things anymore. They're defaulted here right in my navigation pane. In the activities section, I've got sort of two sections. The blue tiles at the top indicate effectively lists or filtered lists based on a certain set of circumstances. And you can see within my list, I don't have a lot here, although I do have a nice indicator showing me that I actually have a job that is running over budget. Like all the tiles that you've probably seen in the later versions of NAV, you can click on that, get a quick view as to which job that is. We also have, just to kind of show it off, a couple ways of presenting lists, if you hadn't noticed before in the 2017 version. I don't have a lot here, but you can see I can kind of toggle in between how I want that list view presented to me. And Constantine is going to show you a little bit more around that. And we will launch into that specific job later and see why it's over budget and where. The next section, the green tiles here, represent actions that I can take related to jobs. So we will hit this button here and create a new job. Notice as I hover over it, it actually tells me what the function is. So for onboarding purposes and training purposes, getting people familiar with the activities that they've got available to them, it's become a lot easier because that instruction is right there for them. And the other thing that we've got now here is also the jobs listing down at the bottom. So previous to this, we always had customers and vendors and items. Now I can cherry pick the specific jobs that I'm really interested in tracking, throw them right down onto my role center, and then I get interesting little KPIs right here that tells me what's my rough percentage complete based on costs, as well as what percentage of the overall job have I invoiced. Likewise, just to quickly show you, you can manage that list like you used to. For those that are familiar, maybe I select my own job. And I do have the opportunity here to exclude it from the KPIs that I'm going to show you next. So I don't want to clutter up my KPIs too much. I want to keep it focused on Deerfield and Guildford projects, but I want to see Aaron's job in my list. And there we go, it's added to the list of jobs. The KPIs that you see here are largely presenting a couple of different things. First one is the price to the budget price. So what you are budgeting or planning to build a customer versus the data that you're accumulating that you are going to build a customer, and there can be differences between the two. Top right shows me my projected profitability so far. So blue shows me revenue, cost to date, and then profit margin, which is negative at this point, largely because I just haven't built this project yet, as per this tile right over here. And then in the last one here, my actual cost related to my budgeted cost. So really, how am I truly tracking from a cost perspective against this project? And we can see that I am going over a little bit there. One quick thing to note, and I'll quickly point this one out, while we have these actions down here in these green tiles, we still have the actions ribbon at the top, which I can click on to expand. And they did do a little bit of redesign on this, certainly in the web client. I think it's in the Windows client as well. Instead of hitting a number of different tabs, like to navigate to, say, the report section, you'll notice that it's all drop-down menu-based when I click on job reports, which I really like, so you don't lose context of where you were in that ribbon. You can actually quickly see, there's my reports, and you get to pick from this list rather than jumping from tab to tab, which is kind of cool. Really small, subtle change, but aesthetically it becomes a lot easier to work with. These KPIs are interactive as well, so I said I was going to launch into this one, so I want to take a look at my actual cost to my total cost, and let me just refresh a few things here. And I know we have a number of job-based deployments in the room and customers here. Anyone care to point out a few of the changes that they've made to this one? There's some pretty obvious ones. No? Tasks right on the job card. I know that's a big one. Maybe not for you guys because you have so many of them, but for a tighter task list, really quickly being able to see these and how we're tracking against the job right on the job card is kind of a big deal. Otherwise, I'd have to normally navigate to the job tasks and then take a look at everything there. So that was one really interesting thing. I still can do that, launch into the regular job task list if I wanted to see or get a little bit more real estate on that one. They've added a project manager to this as well, and that project manager is largely tied to what gets presented on your own personalized homepage. A bit smaller. Within the job tasks, it's a kind of a small and subtle change, but they've started calling the budget. It's not called schedule anymore. So again, another really small thing, but one that we had to go through and train people from the very beginning. No, budget doesn't actually mean budget. There is no budget column. It's called schedule. And by the way, if you want to bill something, it's called contract. It's not called something that's billable. Well, they've changed that just to make it a lot easier for people to understand and use. So finally, I don't have to answer the question anymore to people assessing NAV. Budget is just called budget, and billable is called billable activity. That actually got quite a bit of applause when they first launched it. The other thing, another sort of no-brainer type change that they made is on the statuses. Again, a little small one. The open jobs, or what they previously called jobs on order, are now called open jobs. So again, a little bit more obvious that the job that you're working on or that you can post to is open, not order. Like I said, small and subtle, but a big step in terms of overall usability. We have some new fact boxes on the right of the card, if I can get to the button there. So I don't have to hit statistics anymore like I used to have to do in order to get to this type of information. So I can see my budgeted cost by type. So what I'm budgeting for resource versus items and GL accounts. And I can see really quickly there's probably my biggest problem in terms of budget to actual is I'm overspent on my resources. So we've got a couple new fact boxes that kind of help as well. And for organizations that like to do quoting based on jobs, there is a new quote report. I'll just quickly show you what that one looks like. There we go. So new standard quote report, so you can build these jobs or build the budgets for the jobs in here and then send them out to the customer right off of the job instead of having to mock something up in a sales order that wasn't necessarily tied to the actual job itself. So I said we'd create a new job using the job wizard, so let's go back to the home page and do just that. So it guides me through a couple of steps. Yes, I want to create a new job from an existing job because I'm going to copy budgets. I'll let it default my number, but I'll oops. And let's see who we'll bill it to. The Elkhorn Airport. And it guides me through who do I want to copy it from. We'll copy it from that Guildford one, and I'm going to include everything. Copy quantities also. There we go. My job has now been set up. It launches the job for me as well right away, and it pulled in, as you can see, all of the entries that I had asked. And if I quickly specify that I am the project manager on it, and close that, we can now see it show up on my home page here. So that was that one. And then likewise, creating the sales invoices from jobs also. Simple click of a button, and it guides me through the process to create that, that sales invoice. I'm going to do it for the Guildford job as well. I could do it for all jobs at once. And now my invoice has been created. I believe it's this guy right here. And there we go. And at that point, of course, I can send to customer, that type of thing. And that's it for jobs. So a couple little things, but certainly helped out in the overall usability of the jobs themselves. Cool. So I think, Constantine, I'm over to you now. Would you like me to log out?
You can keep it open.
Keep it open. All right, cool.
Do you want to get the remote session?
Sorry?
Get the remote session.
Oh, the remote session. That one you have to ask me about.
Sorry, yeah. Come out of this guy. Perfect. Do you want to have a load as you're using? No, it's fine. So my part's small, but it could be very valuable. So a lot of times when we start a new implementation, one of the most common requests that we get in terms of item upload is, can we add this new field to help us to sort and categorize our items list? So Microsoft has redesigned the way that you group and categorize the items list and introduced something called attributes. So what attributes are, they are customer-defined, I guess, like fields or qualities of your inventory, and they allow you to basically define and come up with as many different levels of description of that particular item. So what the process is for defining attributes and then also assigning them to each item is, you'll start by going into the attributes list. So I'm just going to type that in the search field. And it's called item attributes. And you'll see that there's already a few that are defined. So for example, you can set your list of different colors that you sell your inventory in. You can also assign different measurements. So here it has depth, width, height. You can also provide any sort of description. So here, for example, it's material description and etc. So I'm going to, for my example, I'm going to use the bicycle. And so I'm just going to add a couple new item attributes. And then I'll go through assigning them to each, to the bicycle item card. So here, let's say, for example, we want to have bicycle type. And for the type field, I'm going to select option, and I'm going to enter a predefined list of the different types of bikes that we're selling. So immediately when I selected option, this little button here in the ribbon, item attribute values, became available. I can click on it, and here I can enter my list. So for example, we sell BMXs, road bikes, recreational, etc. So next, we can then assign these individual attributes on a per item basis, or we can also add them per item category. Then when we assign the item category to the item card, it's going to inherit all of the default attributes that we've assigned to it. So if I go to item category, you can see that I started item category for bicycles here. So just going to open that up, and I also gave it an attribute of material description where I entered a default value of carbon fiber. So like for all bikes that we're going to be selling, it's they're all made out of carbon fiber. So I'm going to create a new attribute for road bikes, and I'm going to select the bicycle item category, and you see that it's inherited all the attributes that were assigned to the bicycle parent item category. I can then continue going down the list and say all of my road bikes that I'm going to sell are in the color black, and all of the bicycle types that I'm going to sell are, let's say, BMXs. So now you can see that the bicycle here is the parent item category, and then just below it is the road bike. So next, I can go into my items list. And I can then just click into that. And on the item category code here, I can select the road bikes. And then notice here in the fact box here, it's inherited all of the different attributes that I've assigned to it. What's more is you can continue to add more attributes to each individual item record. So here, for example, maybe I decided I'm going to include one for bike frames. So bike frame. Then I'm just going to quickly edit it, and then I'm going to give this a measurement, centimeters. And I'm just going to say that for this one, it's going to be a frame of 57 centimeters. So we've assigned attributes, but so far we don't necessarily see the benefits of that. One of the benefits that we have, and I'm just going to open this here, minimize it, is when we're entering sales orders or purchase orders. So when we're entering sales orders and we have a long items list, like some customers have up to like 15,000 records, assigning item attributes will also help refine your search. So if I drill into the items list from the sales order line, I can also filter by the attributes. So for example, if I want to search for all bicycle types that are BMX, I can select that, and then right away it filters down to the list of all the items that were assigned that item category code of road bikes or BMXs. So I can select this, and then right away I entered a sales order with the attribute that I've assigned to it. And one of the so that's pretty much it for item attributes. Are there any questions? Pretty straightforward. I know one of the things that that Aaron wanted me to also highlight and is just the ability to import pictures of item records into your list, and then from the web client you'll be able to see it from there. And so, for example, if I click this list, you'll see that this contains a picture of the bike that we're selling here, and then if I go further down the list, you'll see some more examples of that as well. Yeah, so that's nice and short, and that's basically all that I want to cover. Thank you.
Any more questions on item attributes? Okay. That's pretty much going to conclude our kind of walkthrough on some of the new features and functions in NAV 2017. There's actually a number of other features and functions, so improvements in the CRM integration. We touched a little bit on that with Trevor. Power App and Flow. There's really too many to be able to cover in kind of one session. So we really kind of highlight the ones that we feel are, more relevant to you as our customers. Overall, I think the team feels the new version of NAV is great, really putting kind of more powerful tools in your guys' hands. Setting data up, using the system has become far more intuitive with these features that have been added, assisted setup. You can see with Aaron showing the jobs, it kind of walks you through how to do different processes. So we're pretty excited about the release of NAV 2017. I think we've got some door prizes to kind of hand out, and then once that